Hey, Mike Philippov here from PracticeGuitarNow.com. In this video, we're going to talk about how to make bar chords feel much easier to play. Now, as a quick refresher, bar chords are chords that require you to use your index finger on the fretting hand to fret 2 or more strings. So here's an example of a bar chord. Here my index finger is fretting all 6 strings. Now, bar chords are used in many different songs, and they are by far much harder to play on acoustic guitar than on electric guitar, which is why I got the acoustic guitar out for this demonstration. There are 2 common problems you might run into when you practice bar chords, especially on acoustic guitar. The first one is inability to let all notes of the chord to ring clearly. Here's an example. You can hear there's a lot of string buzzing and the notes aren't ringing out clearly. And the second problem is often the result of trying to solve the previous problem, which is a lot of tension that is created throughout your entire fretting hand, arm, and especially in the thumb. Because what usually happens is if you're struggling to fret all the notes clearly, what most players tend to do is squeeze the neck of the guitar very hard to get all the strings down, and that usually solves the problem, but it creates the second problem, which is your thumb becomes very fatigued, and if you're playing a song that requires you to change between many bar chords, your hand becomes tired very quickly, and it's difficult to keep playing. The first tip to playing bar chords with greater ease is to pay attention to where you're fretting notes. Now, as beginners, we've all learned to fret notes as close to the fret as possible. However, it's very easy to forget about these fundamentals, especially as you get to more advanced levels of playing. Sometimes we tend to think that we're past some of these basics, we no longer have to pay attention to them anymore. And that comes back to hurt you, literally, when you learn to play bar chords, because if you're not fretting notes as close to the fret as possible, you're making it much harder for yourself to play bar chords than necessary. So if you're having trouble with getting bar chords to ring clearly, the very first thing you look at is how close your fingers are to the frets as you're playing the chord. For example, let's say I'm playing this G major bar chord and I'm having a lot of trouble getting the strings to ring clearly. You can hear there's all kinds of nasty buzzing going all over the place. But without applying any more pressure, if all I do is move the index finger closer to the fret, and I also move the ring finger and the pinky fingers closer to the frets as well by making just a very tiny, barely noticeable adjustment, all of a sudden you will feel a world of difference in how easy the chord becomes to play. So we aren't increasing the amount of force that's being applied to the strings, we're simply directing that force that's already being applied in a much more efficient way. The second tip for making bar chords feel much easier to play is to watch what happens with the first knuckle of your middle finger. Many guitar players have this bad habit of flattening out the first knuckle of the middle finger, so when they play bar chords, it looks like this. This requires you to use a lot more tension throughout your entire arm and shoulder, and especially with the middle finger, to maintain this position. And it also makes it harder to get all the notes to ring clearly. If you watch yourself playing bar chords in the mirror, you may notice yourself getting to this position without even realizing it because it's so deeply ingrained into your muscle memory. And what you will find is as soon as you bend the first knuckle of the middle finger, all of a sudden your entire arm becomes much more relaxed and the chord begins to feel much easier to hold and play. So from here, it's just a matter of training this new habit into your technique. After you are aware of what is happening with the first knuckle of the middle finger, if you notice yourself having this problem, it's just a matter of reminding yourself and paying attention to keeping this knuckle bent and curved like this, and making sure that you're ingraining this new habit into your technique through hundreds and hundreds of perfect repetitions. This kind of focused practicing is what effective, perfect guitar practice is all about. And this is part of what I do with guitar players in my rapid fire guitar practice training course to help them learn how to increase the effectiveness of their practice time. The next tip is going to make all the difference between your arm feeling like it's about to fall off from pain of playing bar chords, or your arm and your entire body feeling very relaxed when you play these chords. And that is to stop thinking about squeezing your fingers to the strings when you play guitar. Let me say that again. If you are thinking about squeezing the guitar neck with your fingers and thumb like a clamp or like a vise, you're doing it wrong, because that is going to lead to a very sore thumb, and your entire arm and shoulder is going to be constricted by a whole bunch of unnecessary excess tension. A much better mental cue to use when practicing is to think about pulling on the strings with the weight of your arm, rather than squeezing the strings with finger strength and thumb strength. And pulling on the strings with the weight of the arm sounds complicated, but it's very simple. All you do is you bring your hand into position to play a bar chord, and then you start relaxing your entire arm from the shoulder on down. And what that does is it creates a pulling sensation as if your fingers are pulling on the strings, and that brings the strings to the frets, produces a very clear sounding bar chord with minimum effort. Now, don't confuse pulling on the strings with the weight of the arm with bending strings. You are not bending strings. As you can hear, the chord is in tune. None of the strings are bent. I'm not bending any strings here. What I'm doing is letting my entire arm relax, and that transfers the weight of the arm to the strings and produces a clear sounding chord, versus squeezing the strings with just finger strength alone. And you know you're doing it right when two things are true. First, your fretting hand shoulder must be completely relaxed. And you test for this by taking your right arm, if you're right-handed, putting it on your left shoulder, and then trying to play a bar chord. And if you notice your shoulder rising up like this, or if you notice the muscles in the shoulder area beginning to tense up as you are fretting a chord, then you know you're doing it wrong. You're using too much strength, too much power from the fingers and thumb, and not enough the cue I mentioned earlier of using the pulling of the strings with the weight of the arm to produce the chord. And the second thing to pay attention to is, strangely enough, your elbow. If you're doing it right, if you're playing bar chords with the least amount of effort necessary to produce clear sounding chords, your elbow is going to be very relaxed, and you'll be able to wiggle the elbow from side to side as you play. And if you're not able to do this, or if you're able to do this but with some difficulty or with some effort required from the shoulder, then you know you still need to relax your entire arm more by using the pulling sensation I mentioned earlier, by using the weight of the arm to apply pressure to the strings. So there you go, a few simple tips for you to make bar chords feel a lot easier to play. Pay attention to how close your bar finger and the other fingers are to the frets when you play. Make sure that the first knuckle of the middle finger is not flat like this, but it is curved. And make sure that you are relaxing your entire arm as you are fretting a chord, rather than thinking about squeezing the strings like a vice. And more importantly, understand that effective guitar practice, it's not just about repeating something over and over a bunch of times. It's about identifying what are the exact challenges that are in front of you and breaking those challenges down into very specific, very manageable steps you can easily implement in just a few minutes per day, and then practicing with your mind focused on the right things in the right way to make sure that the right habits are being trained and that your technique is being mastered in the most effective and the most efficient way possible. And this is what I train guitar players to do in my Rapid Fire Guitar Practice training course. You learn how to master all the common guitar techniques and elements of guitar playing, but more importantly, you learn how to become your own guitar practice trainer. So you can take all the music, all the songs, guitar solos, and practice materials you may have struggled with for years and know exactly how to identify what specific things hold you back from mastering that music, break it down, and take them through the right process by doing the right things in the right way, in the right order, to make sure that you not only get the result you want, but enjoy every step of the process of getting there. So you can check out the link that's on the screen right now and read everything about how the course works, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side and training you to practice guitar like a master to get real results. Until next time, have fun practicing, implement these tips, and I'll see you in the next video.